Lady Arabella Winters stood before the gilded mirror in her stepmother's London townhouse, her reflection wavering through unshed tears. The corset her stepsister had laced that morning cut into her ribs with each shallow breath she managed to draw. Pain radiated across her chest, sharp and unrelenting, but she dared not complain. Complaining only made things worse. "You look positively dreadful," her stepsister Henrietta announced from the doorway. "That gown does nothing for your complexion. You look quite ill, actually." Arabella pressed her lips together and said nothing. The gown was old, handed down from Henrietta 3 seasons ago. The deep purple color that had fluttered Henrietta's dark beauty made Arabella look sallow and grey, but it was the only evening gown she possessed, and tonight she had been commanded to attend Lady Pemberton's ball. "Mother says you must dance if anyone asks," Henrietta continued, adjusting her own exquisite cream silk gown. "We cannot have anyone thinking we keep you locked away like some servant." But that was precisely what they did. Since her father's death 2 years ago, Arabella had become little more than an unpaid housemaid in what had once been her own home. Her stepmother had wasted no time in selling off Arabella's mother's jewels, her fine clothes, everything of value. The money from her father's estate had somehow disappeared into her stepmother's accounts, and Arabella had no legal recourse. Unmarried women had no rights, no property, no voice. "Yes, Henrietta," Arabella whispered. Speaking hurt, breathing hurt, everything hurt. The ballroom at Lady Pemberton's estate blazed with 1,000 candles. Music swirled through the air, light and beautiful, while ladies in jewel-colored gowns swept across the floor in the arms of distinguished gentlemen. Arabella stood against the wall, forgotten and invisible, struggling to draw breath. The corset seemed to tighten with each passing moment. Dark spots danced at the edges of her vision. She had been laced into corsets before, of course. All ladies wore them. But Henrietta had pulled the laces with deliberate cruelty that morning, jerking them tighter and tighter, while Arabella gasped. "You have gotten so plump," Henrietta had said, though Arabella was actually quite thin from eating only table scraps. "We must make you presentable somehow." Now the consequences of that cruelty pressed against her lungs. Arabella's fingers clutched at the wall behind her. She needed air. She needed relief. She needed escape. "Are you unwell?" The voice came from beside her, deep and concerned. Arabella turned her head slowly, careful not to move too quickly, lest she faint entirely. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. He was perhaps 35, dressed impeccably in black evening wear that spoke of wealth and refinement. His face held an austere beauty, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines, but his eyes held something unexpected: kindness. "I am perfectly well, sir," Arabella managed, though her voice sounded thin and distant even to her own ears. "You are not," he said flatly. "You can barely breathe. I have been watching you for several minutes, and you have not taken a full breath since I arrived." Heat flooded Arabella's cheeks. He had been watching her. Why would anyone watch someone as plain and unremarkable as herself? "I assure you I am quite all right." "Your lips are turning blue." Arabella touched her mouth instinctively. Were they? She could not tell. Everything felt cold and distant and wrong. The ballroom spun slowly around her. "Your corset is too tight," the man said quietly, stepping closer. His voice held certainty, as though he were diagnosing an obvious ailment. "You need it loosened immediately, or you will collapse." Panic seized Arabella's chest, tightening the constriction further. "I cannot," she whispered. "My stepmother would be furious. I must stay. I was commanded to attend." The man's jaw tightened. "Commanded? he repeated softly. Something dangerous flickered in his grey eyes. I see. He was silent for a moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. Then he spoke again, his voice low and deliberate. I am Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Ashford, and I am offering to help you. A duke. Arabella's mind reeled. She had been speaking with a duke, one of the highest-ranking noblemen in England. She should curtsy, should show proper deference, but she could barely remain standing. Your Grace, she managed, attempting a small curtsy. The movement sent fresh pain lancing through her ribs. Stop that, he said sharply, reaching out to steady her with one hand on her elbow. His touch was gentle despite the command in his voice. You will hurt yourself further. Listen to me carefully. There is a small retiring room just beyond that door. It is private. If you will permit me, I can loosen your corset enough for you to breathe properly. I have no improper intentions, and I will leave the door ajar so that propriety is observed. But you need help, and I am offering it. Arabella stared at him. A duke was offering to loosen her corset. The impropriety of it should have scandalized her, should have sent her fleeing despite her pain. But something in his face, in his eyes, made her trust him. He looked at her as though she mattered, as though her suffering mattered. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Because no one else will, he said simply. And because I know what it is to suffer while everyone around you dances and pretends not to notice. Before she could respond, before she could think or reason or refuse, Duke Alexander Blackwood placed his hand more firmly under her elbow and guided her toward the door. No one stopped them. No one even glanced their way. Arabella realized with bitter clarity that she was so insignificant, so invisible, that her departure with a strange man went completely unnoticed. The retiring room was small and dimly lit, furnished with a cushioned bench and a small table holding a pitcher of water. True to his word, the Duke left the door open about a foot, enough to preserve propriety while allowing them privacy. He turned to face her, his expression serious. Turn around, he said gently. I will only loosen the laces enough for you to breathe, nothing more. Arabella turned slowly, her heart hammering against her constricted ribs. She felt his hands at her back, careful and sure, finding the laces of her corset through the fabric of her gown. His fingers worked quickly, loosening the brutal tightness Henrietta had created. Instantly, blessedly, air rushed into Arabella's lungs. She gasped, drawing her first real breath in hours. The relief was so profound that tears spilled down her cheeks. Better? The Duke asked, his hands still resting lightly against her back. Yes, Arabella breathed. Oh yes, thank you so much. He turned her gently to face him again, and something shifted in his expression when he saw her tears. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her, his movements careful, as though she were something precious and fragile. Who did this to you? He asked quietly. Who laced you so tightly? Arabella dabbed at her eyes with the handkerchief. It was fine linen, monogrammed with his initials. It does not matter, she said. Thank you for your kindness. Your Grace, I should return before I am missed. You will not be missed, he said, and the truth of it hung between them, painful and stark. Tell me your name. Lady Arabella Winters. Recognition flickered across his face. Winters. Your father was Baron Winters, was he not? He died 2 years past. Yes, Your Grace. And you live with your stepmother now. It was not a question, but Arabella nodded anyway. The Duke's expression grew darker, his jaw tightening. I knew your father, he said quietly. We served in the House of Lords together. He was a good man, An honorable man. He spoke of you often, of his beloved daughter. If he could see how you are treated now, it would break his heart. Fresh tears threatened, but Arabella forced them back. She had cried enough. He is not here to see it, she said softly, and I have no recourse. The law gives me no rights. I am entirely at my stepmother's mercy. The Duke was silent for a long moment, studying her face with that same intense focus. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything. "Marry me." Arabella stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." "Marry me," he repeated calmly, as though he were discussing the weather. "I need a wife. You need protection and freedom from your stepmother's cruelty. It is a practical solution." "But you do not know me," Arabella protested, her mind spinning, "and I do not know you. We have spoken for barely 10 minutes. "I know enough," the Duke said. "I know you are suffering. I know you are alone. I know that given the chance, you would choose freedom over this torment. Am I wrong?" He was not wrong. But marriage? To a duke? To this stern, mysterious man who had shown her more kindness in 10 minutes than she had received in 2 years? "Why?" Arabella asked again. "Why would you offer such a thing?" The Duke's expression grew distant, his eyes focusing on something far away. "Because I have been alone for 5 years," he said quietly. "Since my wife died. Everyone tells me I must marry again, must produce an heir, must fulfill my duties to the dukedom. I have no desire for a love match or a passionate romance. I want only a quiet companion, someone who will not make demands I cannot fulfill. In return, I offer you a life of comfort, respect and freedom from those who hurt you." It was the strangest proposal imaginable. No romance, no pretty words, just stark honesty. And yet, something in Arabella's heart stirred. He was offering her a way out, a life where she could breathe freely, where she would not be a servant in her own home, where she would be a duchess with rights and property and protection. "I am not beautiful," Arabella said, needing him to understand, "or accomplished, or charming. I will not grace your ballrooms with elegance. I am plain and poor and worthless. My stepmother tells me so every day." The Duke's eyes flashed with sudden anger. "Your stepmother is a fool," he said sharply, "and a liar. You are none of those things. How can you possibly know?" "Because I am looking at you," he said simply, "and I see a young woman with courage and dignity who has survived 2 years of abuse without losing her kindness. I see someone who deserves better than she has received. That is all I need to know." Arabella's breath caught. No one had spoken to her like that in so long. No one had seen her, truly seen her, in years. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what would you expect of me?" "Companionship," the Duke replied. "Someone to take meals with, to speak with in the evenings. Someone to manage my household and attend social functions at my side. In time, perhaps, an heir, but I would be patient. I would not force anything upon you." It was more than Arabella had dared hope for in her wildest dreams, a life of dignity, respect, safety. She looked into the Duke's grey eyes and saw only sincerity. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Something shifted in the Duke's expression, a subtle relaxation of the tension he carried. "Then it is settled," he said. "I will call upon your stepmother tomorrow to make the arrangements. We will be married by special license within the week." "She will never agree," Arabella said. "She will refuse." A cold smile touched the Duke's lips. "She will not refuse a duke," he said quietly. "Trust me in this." And strangely, impossibly, Arabella did trust him. This man who had noticed her suffering when no one else cared, who had offered her kindness without expecting anything in return, who was now offering her a future. The Duke of Ashford kept his word. The next morning he arrived at Arabella's stepmother's townhouse in a magnificent carriage drawn by 4 matched greys, accompanied by his solicitor and bearing documents that left no room for refusal. Arabella watched from the top of the stairs as her stepmother's face went through a remarkable transformation, from annoyance at being disturbed, to shock at seeing a duke in her receiving room, to barely concealed greed as she understood what he was proposing. "Your Grace does me too much honor," her stepmother simpered, her voice dripping false sweetness. "Of course dear Arabella has my blessing. She is like a daughter to me." The duke's expression remained coldly polite. "Indeed," he said, his tone making it clear he believed nothing of the sort. "Then we are agreed. The wedding will take place in 3 days' time, at my private chapel. Lady Arabella will come to reside at Ashford House immediately to prepare." "Immediately?" her stepmother protested. "Surely she should stay here until the wedding." "No," the Duke said flatly. "She comes with me today. My housekeeper will see to her needs and ensure she has appropriate clothing for the ceremony." There was steel beneath his polite words, and Arabella's stepmother recognized it. She nodded, defeated, though her eyes glittered with malice when she glanced up the stairs toward Arabella. Within an hour, Arabella found herself in the Duke's carriage with a small bag containing her few personal possessions. Everything else, her stepmother declared, belonged to the household. Arabella did not care. She was leaving. She was free. The Duke sat across from her in the carriage, watching her with that intense focus that made her feel both nervous and seen. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. Arabella considered the question. "A little," she admitted, "but less afraid than I have been these past 2 years." He nodded, apparently satisfied with that answer. "My home is large," he said. "You will have your own rooms, your own space. I will not intrude upon your privacy unless you wish it. But I hope, in time, we might become friends." "Friends," Arabella repeated softly. It seemed such a simple thing, and yet it was more than she had dared hope for. "I would like that." Something almost like a smile touched his stern features. "As would I." Ashford House was magnificent, a sprawling estate on the edge of London with manicured gardens and more windows than Arabella could count. Inside, everything spoke of wealth and taste, from the marble floors to the paintings lining the walls to the crystal chandeliers catching the afternoon light. Servants moved quietly through the halls, efficient and well-trained. The Duke's housekeeper, Mrs. Hensworth, was a plump woman with kind eyes and silver hair tucked beneath a crisp white cap. She curtsied to Arabella with genuine respect, addressing her as my lady and your grace to be. "I will show you to your chambers," Mrs. Hensworth said warmly. "His Grace has given instructions that you are to have anything you require. The dressmaker is already waiting to take your measurements for your wedding gown and trousseau." Arabella's rooms were beautiful, decorated in soft blues and creams, with a 4-poster bed piled high with pillows and a window overlooking the gardens. A fire crackled cheerfully in the hearth, driving away the spring chill. It was more luxury than Arabella had known in years. "Is it suitable, my lady?" Mrs. Hensworth asked anxiously. "It is perfect," Arabella breathed. "It is more than perfect." The housekeeper beamed. "His Grace will be pleased. He has been quite concerned about your comfort." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "If I may say so, my lady, the household is very glad. His Grace is to be married again. He has been so very alone since the Duchess died. Perhaps you will bring some light back to this house." Arabella wondered about the first Duchess, but she did not ask. It felt like prying into pain that was not hers to know. Instead, she thanked Mrs. Hensworth and allowed herself to be measured and pinned and draped with fabric samples by the dressmaker, a cheerful woman who declared that Arabella had a perfect figure for the latest fashions. That evening, Arabella dined with the Duke in a smaller, more intimate dining room. The table could have seated 20, but only 2 places had been set, close enough for conversation. The Duke had changed from his formal day-wear into evening clothes, and Arabella wore a simple dress that Mrs. Hensworth had found for her, much finer than anything she had owned in recent years. "Are you settling in?" the Duke asked as the first course was served. "Yes, Your Grace," Arabella said. "Everyone has been very kind." "You must call me Alexander," he said. "We are to be married. Formality seems excessive." "Alexander," Arabella repeated, testing his name on her tongue. "Then you must call me Arabella." He nodded, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few moments. Then Alexander spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "Tell me about yourself, Arabella. What do you enjoy? What makes you happy?" No one had asked her such a question in so long that Arabella struggled to find an answer. "I used to love reading," she said finally. "Before my father died, I spent hours in his library. I read everything I could find. History, poetry, novels. I loved learning about places I had never seen and people I would never meet." "There is a library here," Alexander said. "You are welcome to use it whenever you wish. Consider it yours." Arabella's heart swelled. "Truly? Truly. I want you to be comfortable here, Arabella. This is your home now. You need never fear or suffer again." Tears pricked Arabella's eyes, but these were different tears than she had shed before. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what your kindness means to me." Alexander's expression softened. "Perhaps I have some idea," he said quietly. "I know what it is to be trapped in circumstances beyond your control. I know what it is to suffer while maintaining appearances. We are not so different, you and I." The wedding took place 3 days later in the Duke's private chapel, a small stone building on the grounds of Ashford House. Only a handful of witnesses attended: the Duke's solicitor, Mrs. Hensworth, and a few other servants. Arabella wore a gown of cream silk that fit her perfectly, simple and elegant. Her hair had been dressed by a lady's maid, curled and arranged with small white flowers. When she walked down the short aisle and saw Alexander waiting for her at the altar, something in her chest tightened. He looked solemn and handsome in his dark coat, and when his eyes met hers, she saw something in them that gave her courage. The ceremony was brief. Arabella's voice shook as she spoke her vows, but Alexander's was steady and sure. When the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Alexander lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture of respect rather than passion. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for her ears alone, for trusting me." The wedding breakfast was a small affair in the same intimate dining room where they had shared their first meal. Mrs. Hensworth had outdone herself, preparing a feast of delicacies. The servants toasted the new Duke and Duchess with genuine enthusiasm. That night, Alexander walked Arabella to her chambers personally. At the door, he paused. "I meant what I said," he told her. "I will not force my attentions upon you. Your rooms are your sanctuary. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, for more than this arrangement we have made, you need only tell me. Until then, I ask only for your companionship." Arabella looked up at this strange, honorable man who was now her husband. "You are very kind," she said softly. "I am practical," he corrected, but his eyes held warmth. "Sleep well, Arabella. Tomorrow we will begin to build a life together." In the weeks that followed, Arabella discovered what it meant to be a duchess. She met with Mrs. Hensworth each morning to review household matters, learning the intricacies of managing a large estate. She spent hours in the library, rediscovering her love of reading. She walked in the gardens, breathing deeply of the spring air, marveling at the simple joy of drawing breath without pain. And each evening she dined with Alexander. They talked about books they had read, places they had visited, ideas and philosophies. Alexander was educated and thoughtful, his conversation ranging from politics to poetry. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, as though her thoughts mattered to him. "You have a keen mind," he observed one evening after she had shared her opinion on a political matter. "Have you always been interested in such things?" "My father used to discuss current events with me," Arabella said. "He believed women should understand the world around them, even if we have no power to change it." "You have power now," Alexander said quietly. "As my duchess, your words carry weight. Your opinions matter. Do not discount yourself so easily." Arabella was learning not to. In this house, surrounded by servants who treated her with respect and a husband who valued her thoughts, she was beginning to remember who she had been before her stepmother's cruelty had beaten her down. She was beginning to believe she might be worth something after all. One afternoon, about a month after their wedding, Arabella was in the library reading when Alexander entered. She had not heard him come home and looked up in surprise from her book. "I hope I am not disturbing you," he said. "Not at all," Arabella replied, setting the book aside. "Is something wrong?" "No. I simply wished to see you." He moved closer, his eyes taking in the scene. Arabella curled in a large chair by the window, afternoon sunlight falling across her face, making her hair shine copper gold. "You look content." "I am content," Arabella said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. "More content than I have been in years." Alexander nodded, but something in his expression was troubled. He moved to the window, looking out at the gardens. "Arabella," he said slowly, "I find myself in an unexpected situation." Alarm shot through her. "What is it? Have I done something wrong?" "No." He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "You have done everything right. Too right. I find that this arrangement we made, this practical marriage of convenience, has become something I did not anticipate." Arabella rose from her chair, her heart beginning to race. "I do not understand." Alexander took a step toward her. "I notice things about you," he said quietly. "The way you smile when you think no one is watching, the sound of your laughter when something in your book amuses you, the kindness you show to every servant, treating them as though they matter, the grace with which you have taken on the role of duchess despite having no training or preparation." "Alexander," Arabella whispered, uncertain where this was leading. "I notice everything about you," he continued, his voice rough with emotion, "and I find that I care more than I intended to, more than is wise." Understanding bloomed in Arabella's chest, along with a fierce, unexpected joy. "Is that so terrible?" she asked softly. "It terrifies me," Alexander admitted. "I told you I wanted no love match. I told you I could not give you passion or romance, but I find that you have crept into my heart without my permission, and I do not know what to do about it." Arabella moved closer to him, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. This powerful duke, this man who commanded respect from everyone around him, was standing before her with his defenses down, admitting to feelings he clearly had not wanted. "What if," she said carefully, "I told you that I have noticed things about you as well?" His eyes snapped to hers. "What things?" "The way you are kind to the servants, knowing each of their names and asking about their families, the way you sit reading in the evenings with such focus as though the book is the only thing in the world, the way your eyes soften when you look at me, even though you try to hide it, the way you have given me freedom and respect and safety without asking anything in return. Arabella, he breathed. What if I told you, she continued, her courage growing, that this practical arrangement has become something else for me as well, that I look forward to our evenings together more than anything else in my day, that I find myself thinking about you at odd moments, wondering what you are doing, hoping you are well. Alexander closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He stopped just before touching her, his hands rising as if to cup her face, then falling back to his sides. I do not want to hurt you, he said roughly. I have already lost one wife. I do not think I could bear to lose another. Understanding flooded Arabella. This was not just about unexpected feelings. This was about fear, about grief, about a wound that had never fully healed. Tell me about her, Arabella said gently. Tell me about your first wife. Alexander's jaw tightened. Her name was Catherine. We married young, a love match. She was beautiful and vibrant and full of life. She died of a fever 5 years ago, and I was powerless to stop it. I watched her fade day by day, until there was nothing left. I swore I would never feel that helpless again. So you closed your heart, Arabella said softly. You decided never to love again because love brings the risk of loss. Yes, Alexander said simply, and then you came along with your courage and your broken spirit that refused to stay broken, and you made me feel things I thought were dead. Arabella reached out slowly and took his hand. He let her, his fingers closing around hers with desperate strength. I cannot promise that I will never die, she said. None of us can, but I can promise that for however long we have, I will be here. I will be real. I will care about you with everything I am. You already do, Alexander said, his voice breaking slightly. I see it in your eyes every time you look at me, and it terrifies me, because I do not deserve such care. Yes, you do, Arabella said firmly. You saved me, Alexander. You gave me back my life. You have been patient and kind and honorable. You deserve every happiness. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her carefully, as though she were precious and fragile. Arabella leaned into him, resting her head against his chest, hearing the strong, steady beat of his heart. I am not good at this, Alexander murmured against her hair. At opening my heart, at being vulnerable. I have spent 5 years building walls. Then we will take them down together. Arabella said, one stone at a time. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am only asking you to let me in. She felt him nod, his arms tightening around her. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as afternoon faded into evening. 2 people who had been broken in different ways, finding healing in each other's presence. The weeks that followed brought a subtle shift in their relationship. Alexander began to seek out Arabella's company more deliberately. He showed her parts of the estate she had not yet seen, walking with her through gardens and fields, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of his childhood. He asked her opinions on estate matters and seemed to genuinely value her input. Arabella, for her part, found herself opening like a flower in sunlight. The constant tension she had carried for 2 years gradually loosened. She laughed more freely. She spoke more confidently. She began to believe that she was safe, that this good thing that had happened to her would not suddenly be snatched away. One evening, about 2 months after their wedding, they were in the drawing room together. Alexander was reading correspondence, while Arabella worked on embroidery, something she had taken up again after years of having no time for such pursuits. The silence between them was comfortable, companionable. Arabella, Alexander said suddenly, setting down his letter. There is to be a ball next week at the Pembrokes estate. I have been invited, and you as my Duchess, I would like you to attend with me. Anxiety twisted in Arabella's stomach. A ball meant society, meant being seen and judged, meant facing people who had once known her as a penniless stepdaughter. I do not know if I am ready, she said quietly. I do not dance well. I have no skill at small talk. I will embarrass you. Alexander rose from his chair and came to kneel beside her, taking her hands in his. The gesture was so unexpected that Arabella dropped her embroidery. You could never embarrass me, he said firmly. You are my Duchess. You are intelligent, kind, and graceful. Anyone who cannot see your worth is a fool. But I am not beautiful, Arabella protested, old insecurities rising. I am not accomplished like other ladies. You are beautiful to me, Alexander said, and the sincerity in his voice made Arabella's breath catch. When I look at you, I see strength and courage and a spirit that refused to be broken despite everything you endured. I see the woman who brings light into my home, who makes me laugh, who has somehow made me believe in happiness again. That is far more beautiful than any shallow prettiness. Tears gathered in Arabella's eyes. You truly mean that? I have never meant anything more. Alexander reached up and gently brushed a tear from her cheek. Will you come to the ball with me? Let me show the world the remarkable woman I married. How could she refuse such a request? Yes, Arabella whispered. I will come. The night of the ball, Arabella's lady's maid dressed her in a gown of deep blue silk that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair was arranged in an elegant style, with small diamonds woven through the curls. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a duchess, confident and refined. When she descended the stairs to where Alexander waited, his expression made her heart flutter. He stared at her as though seeing her for the first time, wonder and something deeper flickering in his grey eyes. Arabella, he breathed, you are stunning. She felt her cheeks warm. The dress is beautiful. Your taste is excellent. It is not the dress, Alexander said, moving to the bottom of the stairs and offering his hand to help her down the last few steps. Though it is lovely, it is you. You are radiant. At the ball, Arabella's fears of being overlooked or dismissed proved unfounded. As the Duchess of Ashford, she commanded respect and attention. Ladies curtsied to her. Gentlemen bowed. People sought her conversation, wanting to know the new Duchess who had captured the heart of the reclusive Duke of Ashford. For yes, the town had noticed. They saw the way the Duke looked at his wife, the way he stayed close to her side, the way his stern features softened when she spoke. It was clear to everyone that this was not merely a marriage of convenience, this was love. Arabella's stepmother was in attendance with Henrietta. When they saw Arabella enter on the Duke's arm, both women went pale. Arabella held her head high, refusing to shrink or cower. She was not the powerless girl they had tormented. She was a duchess now, with a husband who valued her and a position that protected her. Lady Arabella, her stepmother simpered, approaching with Henrietta in tow. Or should I say, Your Grace, how wonderful you look. We have missed you so. Have you? Arabella said coolly. How strange. I do not recall receiving any letters or visits from you since my marriage. Her stepmother's false smile faltered. Well, we did not wish to intrude on your happiness. Alexander's hand settled at the small of Arabella's back, a gesture of support and possession. How considerate, he said, his voice like ice. I trust you will continue to respect my wife's privacy. Good evening. It was a dismissal, clear and final. Her stepmother's face flushed with humiliation as she and Henrietta hurried away. Arabella felt a fierce satisfaction. She had faced them without fear, and they no longer had any power over her. "You handled that beautifully," Alexander murmured in her ear. "I had a good teacher in standing up for myself," Arabella replied, looking up at him with warmth in her eyes. The evening passed in a blur of dancing and conversation. Alexander danced with Arabella 3 times, far more than propriety strictly allowed for a married couple, but he did not seem to care what anyone thought. When he held her in his arms during a waltz, the rest of the ballroom seemed to fade away. "Are you tired?" he asked as they swayed together. "We can leave whenever you wish." "Not yet," Arabella said. "I am enjoying myself." "I never thought I would say that at a ball, but I am." Alexander smiled, a real genuine smile that transformed his stern features into something breathtaking. "Good. You deserve to enjoy yourself. You deserve every happiness." "I have happiness," Arabella said softly. "Here, with you." His arms tightened around her, and something passed between them, unspoken but profound. They were no longer 2 people bound by a practical arrangement. They were husband and wife in truth, connected by something deeper than contract or convenience. That night, when they returned to Ashford House, Alexander walked Arabella to her chambers as had become their custom. But at the door, instead of bidding her good night and leaving, he hesitated. "Arabella," he said quietly, "may I come in, just to talk? I am not ready for the evening to end." Arabella's heart raced, but she nodded and opened the door wider. Alexander followed her inside, the first time he had entered her private rooms since their wedding night, when he had carried her over the threshold and then immediately left to give her privacy. They sat together on the small sofa near the fireplace. A fire had been laid, but not yet lit. Alexander bent to light it, and soon warm flames were crackling cheerfully. In the flickering light, with the rest of the house quiet around them, the moment felt intimate and significant. "Tonight was wonderful," Arabella said. "Thank you for convincing me to go." "You needed no convincing," Alexander replied. "You simply needed to believe in yourself the way I believe in you." "You have given me so much," Arabella said, turning to face him fully. "Not just comfort and safety, but confidence, a sense of worth. The ability to look at myself and see something other than the failure my stepmother told me I was." "You were never a failure," Alexander said fiercely. "You were surviving. There is profound strength in that." "I survived," Arabella agreed. "But now I want to do more than survive. I want to live, truly live." Alexander's eyes darkened with understanding and something deeper. "What does that mean to you?" Arabella took a breath, gathering her courage. "It means I am ready for this marriage to be real in every way. It means I want you, not as a rescuer or a protector, but as my husband. It means I have fallen in love with you, Alexander, and I cannot pretend otherwise any longer." The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Then Alexander spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I have tried so hard not to love you," he said. "I told myself I was protecting my heart, protecting us both. But Arabella, I failed utterly. I look at you and I see my future, my happiness, my home. I love you, desperately, completely, with everything I am." The words hung between them, a declaration neither had dared speak until now. Then Alexander reached for her, cupping her face in his hands with exquisite gentleness. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Truly kiss you as a man kisses the woman he loves?" "Yes," Arabella breathed. "Please, yes." His lips met hers softly at first, tender and questioning, Arabella responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as her own. The kiss deepened, becoming something more passionate, more real. It was a promise, and a claiming, and a homecoming all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," Arabella whispered. "Not in separate rooms anymore. Be my husband in truth." "Are you certain?" Alexander asked, though the desire in his eyes was unmistakable. "I have never been more certain of anything," Arabella said. What followed was tender and passionate, and perfect. Alexander treated Arabella with reverence, taking his time, making sure she felt cherished and desired. For the first time in her life, Arabella understood what it meant to be loved completely, body and soul, and she loved him back with equal fervor, giving herself without reservation to this man who had saved her and then done something even more miraculous. He had helped her save herself. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in her bed, Alexander held Arabella close, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her skin. "I never thought I would feel this way again," he murmured. "After Catherine died, I thought love was behind me. You proved me wrong. Your love for Catherine does not diminish what we have," Arabella said softly. "She was part of your life, part of making you who you are. I do not begrudge her memory." Alexander pressed a kiss to her hair. "You are extraordinary, do you know that?" "I am only myself," Arabella said. "But with you, that finally feels like enough." The months that followed were the happiest of Arabella's life. She and Alexander were inseparable, their love evident to everyone around them. They ran the estate together, hosted dinners for friends, and spent quiet evenings reading by the fire. Arabella blossomed in the light of Alexander's love, becoming more confident and assured with each passing day. But happiness, as Arabella had learned, was never guaranteed. Trouble came in the form of a letter delivered one autumn morning. Alexander's face darkened as he read it, his jaw tightening. "What is it?" Arabella asked, alarmed. "My cousin Edward," Alexander said, his voice tight with anger. "He is contesting my marriage to you. He claims it was irregular, that the special license was improperly obtained. He wants the marriage annulled." Horror flooded through Arabella. "Can he do that?" "He can try," Alexander said grimly. "Edward is my heir, as long as I have no children. If he can dissolve our marriage and prevent me from remarrying, he stands to inherit everything. It is about money and title, nothing more." "But we have done nothing wrong," Arabella protested. "I know, but Edward has influential friends, and he is clever. He will make this difficult." Alexander took her hands, his grip firm and reassuring. "Listen to me, Arabella. I will not let this happen. I will fight for you, for us, with everything I have. You are my wife, and nothing and no one will take you from me." The legal battle that followed was brutal. Edward dragged their marriage through public scrutiny, making claims that Alexander had been mentally unfit when he married Arabella, that she had somehow trapped him, that the entire thing was a scheme for a penniless nobody to secure a fortune. The town buzzed with gossip. Some supported the Duke and his Duchess, others whispered that perhaps Edward had a point. Through it all, Arabella and Alexander stood united. They attended hearings together, faced down critics together, refused to be separated or intimidated. But the strain took its toll. Arabella saw the weariness in Alexander's eyes, the weight of fighting for their love against those who would see it destroyed. One night, after a particularly difficult day of testimony, Arabella found Alexander in his study, staring into the fire. He looked exhausted and defeated. "Perhaps I should leave," Arabella said quietly from the doorway. "If I were gone, Edward would have no reason to continue this fight. You could find someone more suitable, someone whose background would never be questioned. Alexander's head snapped up. What did you say? I am trying to be practical, Arabella said, though the words felt like knives in her throat. I do not want to be the cause of your ruin. In 3 strides, Alexander crossed the room and pulled her into his arms with desperate strength. You will not leave, he said fiercely. Do you understand me? You will not sacrifice yourself for me. I would give up the title, the estate, everything before I would give you up. Alexander, Arabella whispered, tears streaming down her face. I love you, he said, his voice breaking. You are not the cause of any ruin. You are the reason I am alive again after years of merely existing. You are my heart, Arabella. Without you, none of this matters. Arabella clung to him, drawing strength from his conviction. I love you too, she said, so much it frightens me. Then be frightened with me, Alexander said. But do not leave. Promise me. I promise. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Alexander's former mother-in-law, Catherine's mother, appeared at one of the hearings and asked to testify. She was an elderly lady of impeccable reputation, and when she stood before the court, her words carried weight. I knew Catherine, my beloved daughter, better than anyone, she said clearly. And I know what she would want for Alexander. She would want him to be happy. She would want him to love again. When I met the Duchess of Ashford, I saw immediately what my daughter would have seen. A woman of character and strength who brings light into Alexander's life. This marriage is not a scheme or a fraud. It is a blessing. To claim otherwise is to dishonor Catherine's memory and Alexander's grief. Her testimony was devastating to Edward's case. Combined with testimony from servants, friends, and the vicar who had married them, the evidence overwhelmingly supported Alexander and Arabella. The court ruled in their favor, declaring the marriage valid and binding. Edward's challenge was dismissed with prejudice. When the verdict was announced, Arabella felt as though she could breathe freely for the first time in months. Alexander pulled her into his arms right there in the courtroom, not caring who saw, and kissed her soundly. It is over, he murmured against her lips. We have won. We have, Arabella agreed, laughing and crying at the same time. We have. That night, as they celebrated with friends who had supported them throughout the ordeal, Alexander made an announcement. He stood and raised his glass, his eyes finding Arabella across the room. I would like to propose a toast, he said. To my Duchess, the strongest, most courageous woman I have ever known. She has faced cruelty and hardship with dignity. She has survived those who wished to break her, and she has given me the greatest gift anyone could give. The ability to love again. Arabella, you are my heart, my home, my everything. I thank God every day for the moment I noticed you at that ball, suffering and alone, and had the courage to offer you help. It was the best decision of my life. Everyone raised their glasses, but Arabella only had eyes for Alexander. She crossed the room to him, and he pulled her close, bending to kiss her forehead. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for letting me, Alexander replied, for trusting me when you had no reason to, for loving me back even though I tried so hard not to let you. You saved me just as much as I saved you. It was true. Arabella realized they had saved each other. Two broken people who had found healing in unexpected love. 1 year after their wedding, Arabella discovered she was expecting a child. Alexander's joy was profound and evident. He became even more attentive, more protective, fussing over her in ways that made her laugh and feel cherished all at once. I am not fragile, Arabella protested one morning when Alexander insisted she should not walk to the village. I know you are not fragile. Alexander said, kneeling beside her chair and resting his hand gently on the small swell of her belly. "But you are precious. You are carrying our child. Forgive me if I wish to ensure both of you are safe and comfortable." How could she argue with that? "You are going to be an excellent father," Arabella said softly, threading her fingers through his hair. "I hope so," Alexander said. "I want our child to grow up knowing love and security. I want them never to know the pain and loneliness we both experienced." "They will not," Arabella promised, "because they will have us, and we know what it is to suffer. So we will guard against it. We will teach them kindness and courage and the importance of seeing people's true worth." Their daughter was born on a spring morning, tiny and perfect, with her mother's delicate features and her father's grey eyes. Alexander held her with infinite care, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "She is beautiful," he whispered, "like her mother." "She is ours," Arabella said, exhausted but radiant. "Our little miracle." They named her Catherine, after Alexander's first wife, a gesture that honored the past while celebrating the future. Catherine's mother, now a doting grandmother to Arabella's child, wept with joy at the tribute. As Arabella watched Alexander cradle their daughter, singing softly to her, she marveled at how far they had come. From that first night when he had noticed her suffering and offered kindness, through the gradual building of trust and love, to this moment of complete joy. She thought about the girl she had been, broken and hopeless, certain she would never know happiness again. She thought about the man Alexander had been, locked in grief and loneliness, convinced love was behind him. And she thought about how wrong they both had been, how life could surprise you with joy when you least expected it. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked, looking up from their daughter to smile at his wife. "That I am grateful," Arabella said simply, "for everything, for your kindness that first night, for your patience, for your love, for this life we have built together." Alexander moved to sit beside her on the bed, careful of both his girls. He wrapped his free arm around Arabella, pulling her close so that they formed a complete unit, husband, wife, and child. "I am grateful too," he said quietly, "for your courage in accepting my proposal, for your trust, for the way you love me, broken pieces and all, for giving me a reason to live again instead of merely existing." They sat together in peaceful silence, watching their daughter sleep, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Outside, the gardens bloomed with spring flowers. Servants moved through the house, their voices cheerful and content. Everything spoke of life and love and happiness. Arabella had once believed she was worthless, that her life had no value, that she would forever be trapped in suffering. Alexander had once believed his heart was dead, that love was lost to him, that he would spend the rest of his days in empty duty. They had both been wrong, and in being wrong, in finding each other, they had discovered something infinitely more precious than either had dared imagine, a love that healed, that transformed, that made them whole. Their story had begun with a simple act of kindness. A duke noticing a suffering young woman and offering to loosen her too tight corset. But what had started as a practical gesture had grown into something miraculous, because sometimes, Arabella thought, salvation comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes love appears when you have given up hope, and sometimes the greatest romance begins not with passion, but with simple human compassion. As she sat there wrapped in Alexander's arms, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them, Arabella knew she had found her happily ever after, not because a prince had rescued her from a tower, but because a broken man had seen her pain and offered kindness, and together they had built something beautiful from the ruins of their separate sorrows. This was their triumph, this was their joy, this was love. The end came not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with quiet contentment. Years passed, and the Duke and Duchess of Ashford became known throughout England as one of the most devoted couples of their generation. They raised Catherine and two sons who followed, teaching them kindness and courage and the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances. Arabella never forgot the girl she had been, standing at a ball gasping for breath, invisible and alone. She used her position as Duchess to help other young women in difficult circumstances, quietly supporting charities and providing opportunities for those who had none. Alexander never forgot the lonely years before Arabella came into his life. He held her close every night, grateful for each day they had together, never taking their love for granted. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when they sat together by the fire, Alexander would remember that night at the ball. He would remember noticing a young woman struggling to breathe, remember making the choice to offer help, remember the moment that had changed both their lives forever. "Do you ever regret it?" Arabella asked him once. "Marrying me so impulsively." Alexander pulled her closer and kissed her temple. "My only regret," he said softly, "is that I did not notice you sooner." It was the perfect answer. Because their story had never been about a rescue. It had been about two people who noticed each other, who chose kindness when they could have chosen indifference, who built love from practical beginnings and transformed it into something extraordinary. They had started with a simple question: "Your corset is too tight, may I help?" And that help had become a lifetime of love, a family, a legacy of kindness that would continue long after they were gone. Sometimes, Arabella knew, the greatest love stories begin with the smallest acts of compassion, and sometimes all it takes to change a life is someone who truly sees you, who notices your suffering, and who cares enough to offer help. Alexander had been that person for her, and in accepting his help, in trusting him with her broken heart, Arabella had given him the greatest gift, the ability to love again. Together, they had found their happily ever after. Not in spite of their pain, but because of it. Because they understood suffering. They treasured joy. Because they had known loneliness, they cherished connection. Because they had been broken, they knew how precious it was to be whole. This was their story, a duchess and her duke. A practical marriage that became passionate love, a simple act of kindness that changed everything. And every day, for the rest of their lives, they were grateful for that moment at the ball when everything began, when he noticed, when she trusted, when love, quietly and unexpectedly, took root and grew into something beautiful beyond measure.